And you, would you have paid $250,000 to dive towards the most mythical vestige of maritime history? On June 18, 2023, 5 men venture into the unknown aboard the Titan, an experimental submersible promising the most exclusive experience in the world. Head to the abyss, 3,800 meters below the surface, to contemplate the legendary Titanic face to face. An Odyssey billed $250,000 per person for a few hours, confined in a composite tube barely larger than a shower box, crushed by an abysmal pressure equivalent to 380 times that of the surface. Among its adventurers, Amish Harding, British billionaire and seasoned explorer; Shahzada Daoud, Pakistani magnate accompanied by his son Solman, 19 years old; Paul-Henri Narjolet, legendary French diver nicknamed Monsieur Titanic with more than 35 dives on the wreck; and finally Stockton Rush, founder of OceanGate, at the controls of his own creation. That day there was no sign that this descent, sold as the ultimate frontier of exceptional tourism, was going to turn into a planetary nightmare scrutinized minute by minute, because 2 hours after immersion, silence, total disappearance of the signal, no emergency beacon, no distress call, just digital nothingness. What the world didn't know yet was that this pharaonic expedition may have just revealed one of the most serious techno-industrial scandals in modern exploration, while you went about your business, working asleep or scrolling absent-mindedly on your phone. A drama of rare intensity was played out in the icy depths of the North Atlantic. The Titan, this high-tech cylinder supposed to push the limits, carried 5 destinies in the most total darkness, nearly 4,000 meters below the surface, 5 lives in a pressurized cabin of 6.7 millimeters propelled towards darkness or even light, abandons. And then silence, no more transmission, the only message sent from the abyss: all good here. Then absolute nothingness, which at first appeared to be a simple technical failure, will quickly turn into a massive ethical, technological, and media disaster. This story far exceeds that of a lost submersible. It highlights the human hubris, forced innovation, extreme risks accepted by fortunes fascinated by the engineering decisions that will have a huge human cost. If he dived that day, it was for the Titanic, a name engraved in the collective imagination, a symbol of audacity, excess, disaster. When she left Southampton in April 1912, the Titanic embodied the pinnacle of naval luxury. The unsubmersible absolute triumph of modern engineering. On board, the world's elite adventurers from entire bloodlines. Exceptional carpets, 24-karat gold ornaments, baccarat crystal, 18-course gourmet menus, heated seawater swimming pool. Revolutionary for the time, construction swallowed up about $7.5 billion in 1912, the equivalent of more than $200 million today. A massive investment. But the illusion of invincibility suddenly collapsed in the icy night of April 14th, 15th, 1912, when her steel hull met an iceberg. The behemoth sank in less than 2 hours and 40 minutes, 1,500 souls lost, a global trauma. And since then, the Titanic has haunted minds. It attracts passionate researcher, historian, and treasure hunter. Its fascination is such that in 2023, some are willing to sacrifice a fortune to catch a glimpse of the rusty remains of the steel giant lying in the abysmal darkness. Today, treating yourself to a dive to the Titanic is much more than a whim of the ultra-rich. It's the ultimate experience for a tiny elite. An expedition with OceanGate is 8 days of total immersion on a scientific ship, equipped with transport and Liporter, personal chef, oceanography expert. The Holy Grail, embarked in the Titan. On June 18, 2023 at 2:00 p.m., the Titan begins its descent. Mission: reach the Titanic wreck at 3,800 meters depth. On board, 5 people peer into the abyss through a single porthole. On the surface, on the support ship Polar Prince, everything seems normal, almost routine. The last message is laconic: all good here, everything was under control. But minutes later, the Polar Prince team tries to contact them again. A radio call, then a second, and then nothing. Complete radio silence, connection interrupted. This is the moment everything topples on the surface. Each second becomes torture. The anguish intensifies because under the water, the oxygen counts down with precision. 96 H maximum before total asphyxiation, but above all, they evolve at a depth where the pressure becomes apocalyptic. Visualized at nearly 4,000 meters, each square centimeter of the submersible supports the equivalent of a mass of 380 atmospheres, or nearly 400 kilojoules. It's like an entire semi-trailer resting on your chest. At this depth, even titanium can deform like aluminum foil. The slightest structural imperfection, the tiniest microcrack, and everything can disintegrate in a millisecond. And while the surface team desperately tries to make contact, in the depths, Titan East may already be reduced to nothing. As soon as the disappearance of the Titan is made official, a frantic race against time begins. The oxygen reserves of the submersible are estimated at exactly 96 hours. Every second becomes crucial instantly. An international mobilization of historic magnitude is unfolding. The United States, Canada, France, even the Bahamas, all deploy and resemble massive resources, elite teams, and especially ultra-modern research technologies. In total, tens of millions of dollars are invested in just 4 days to locate the Titan. Oceanographic vessels therefore specialized, P-8 Poseidon of the US Navy, Victor 6000 autonomous submarines, multi-beam sonar systems capable of mapping the seabed to the nearest centimeter. The most sophisticated technological arsenal on the planet is mobilized to methodically scan every patch of the seabed, but the operational conditions defy understanding. At 3,800 meters depth, the temperature is close to -2 degrees C, the darkness is absolute, and the overwhelming pressure would instantly pulverize any conventional equipment, the remotely operated vehicles. These remote-controlled underwater robots, equipped with sensors and articulated arms, become vital extensions of research teams. Thanks to them, we can explore the unexplorable without exposing more human lives. But even with this technological armada, the obstacles remain titanic. The ocean is vast, chaotic, impenetrable, and meanwhile the macabre countdown continues inexorably. And suddenly, as hope fades, a faint, distant rhythmic sound, the ultra-sensitive hydrophones pick up sound pulses spaced about 30 minutes apart. Hope is suddenly reborn. What if it was them? What if, in the obscure nothingness nearly 4,000 millimeters below the surface, someone was still methodically striking the hull in a last desperate SOS on board the Polar Prince? And the emotion is palpable. The acousticians frantically analyze the sound waves. The cadence calls out, human origin, intentional sequence, can be improvised Morse code. The hours are running out. The entire planet remains suspended to its dull beats coming from the depths. Families perceive an imminent miracle, but specialists remain clinically cautious. Then hope suddenly vanished. After yet another attempt at communication, the Polar Prince activates the absolute emergency frequencies. No response, not the slightest echo, total acoustic nothingness. And there the hope collapses. The glacial reality imposes itself. It is perhaps no longer an incident with possible exit. It is probably already a consummated catastrophe. The oxygen reserves are dwindling implacably. Every minute becomes precious, but in the abyss everything remains hopelessly silent. So we begin to wonder, how could such a tragedy have occurred, and especially when, why did no one anticipate this catastrophic scenario? Then a chilling revelation emerges. The Titan, this submersible presented as revolutionary, was in reality only an experimental prototype, an uncertified device. And yet it carried wealthy civilians to the deepest depths of the ocean. And while we were saying that the facts are that we are feverishly looking for explanations, a technical term is beginning to circulate in expert circles. A word that no one dared to pronounce officially, but that some engineers had already mentioned a little privately since the early hours: implosion. When we talk about implosion at this depth, we are not describing a repairable accident. We evoke an instant disintegration, a catastrophic crushing of unprecedented violence. Deep-sea specialists viscerally fear this physical phenomenon, because when structural integrity gives way under extreme pressure, the hull pulverizes inward at supersonic speed like a compressed can. But with destructive energy multiplied by 1,000, it's no longer a matter of rescue, it's total annihilation. And when one examines the controversial technical choices, the carbon fiber composite structure, the unconventional cylindrical shape of the Titan, suspicions become macabre certainty. It wasn't just an accident, it was a disaster foretold, almost programmed. The most disturbing thing is that the warning signs were omnipresent. A former employee has repeatedly sounded the alarm. David Lockridge, former director of marine operations at OceanGate, had formally reported in 2018 that the Titan's porthole was only approved for depths of 1,300 meters, while immersions at nearly 4,000 meters were projected, immediate consequence of his alert dismissal for breach of confidentiality. Another naval engineer, Tony Nissen, had categorically refused to pilot the craft for a mission to the Titanic, declaring texting: "I would never risk my life in a device designed like this." Same result, dismissed without delay. And the testimonies accumulate inexorably. Worrying cracks during tests, a crack detected in the pressurized wall, an artisanal navigation system deemed fundamentally faulty. All these elements were undocumented, archived, officially reported. However, nothing stopped the inexorable race towards the abyss. This was not isolated negligence, it was an institutionalized culture of recklessness in the face of risk. A company where security protocols were systematically subordinated to spectacular innovation, sensational marketing, and the obsessive quest for media exploits. And this unbridled ambition has culminated in absolute disaster. This is where the truth comes out. The startup was in a precarious financial situation. Former employees revealed that salary payments were regularly subject to significant delays. OceanGate's treasury was depleted. But instead of stalling, the company accelerated frantically. Less validation protocol, less structural verification, less compliance with international standards, but more aggressive advertising campaigns. Stockton Rush, the CEO, tirelessly repeated his mantra: "If you comply with all the regulations, you will never truly innovate." A phrase supposed to embody entrepreneurial audacity. But in the unforgiving depths of the ocean, it's a deadly philosophy. Because every professional diver, every expert in submersible technology knows viscerally in the abyss, the error is definitive. OceanGate wanted to revolutionize underwater exploration, too fast, too radically. And when you scroll through the fundamental laws of physics in the deep sea, you precipitate the inevitable. But this tragedy does not stop at the implosion. Fatal? No, it opens a legal abyss with multiple ramifications because what happened transcends the simple human tragedy. It is also, and maybe above all, a systemic, industrial, managerial, and regulatory bankruptcy in the United States. French explorer Paul-Henri Narjolet filed a lawsuit against OceanGate. Claiming $50,000 in damages, their lawyer is adamant crucial information about the real risks was deliberately withheld. If Paul Henry had known that the cabin was structurally designed to withstand barely 1,300 miles, he would never have taken his place in this technological coffin. And then comes this shocking detail. Based on the latest telemetry data recovered, the ballast would have been dropped at mid-depth. This is the ultimate emergency protocol. This means that the passengers were desperately trying to get back to the surface. That they became aware of the critical situation and felt pure terror? This type of evidence can radically transform the legal nature of the case into civil liability law. The psychological suffering immediately preceding death can exponentially increase potential compensation. But OceanGate is hiding behind its contractual defense. Passengers had to sign an exhaustive release explicitly acknowledging the dangers inherent in the expedition. The fundamental question then arises: can we legitimately speak of informed consent when essential information is knowingly withheld? And the court soap opera is just beginning. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York has opened a preliminary investigation. OceanGate raised more than $28 million from institutional and private investors. What was the precise allocation of these funds? Why have security protocols been sacrificed on the altar of corporate communication? Suspicions of fraudulent management and even more serious criminal offenses gradually emerge. Former employees are interviewed under oath. In-depth accounting investigations are initiated. The company, for its part, has suspended Cindy's entire operations. And at the heart of this turmoil remains a name, that of a man, Stockton Rush. An avant-garde visionary for some, an unconscious entrepreneur for others, he aimed to revolutionize commercial underwater exploration. Above all, he precipitated 5 existences into a metal sarcophagus. This catastrophe is an implacable mirror, a mirror stretched to our contemporary era, one where innovation is accomplished with great reinforcement of marketing slogans and spectacular capital raising, where scientific rigor is sacrificed on the altar of accelerated disruption, where people take pride in transgressing established norms, at the potential cost of human life. So perhaps we should collectively ask ourselves, how many more disasters will it take to integrate this fundamental truth? That the immutable laws of physics never bend to the human ego, no matter how disproportionate it may be. And in this society where we sell tickets at $250,000 to touch the limits of the impossible, how far will contemporary hubris extend? Thank you very much for following this analysis to its conclusion. If you would like to support this in-depth investigative format, subscribe to the channel. Your commitment is vital to the sustainability of this content. Would you knowingly have boarded the Titan? Share in comments.